In a sports media landscape that has become flooded with former athletes, Hall of Famers, and larger-than-life characters known for making outlandish or downright questionable takes on their respective sport.
Johnny Manziel will become even bigger in the city of Cleveland than his buddy and business partner LeBron James ever was in the city of Cleveland. One day.
I have predicted, and I'll say it again, Tebow 2.0 is coming, and it's already starting today. It's Lamar Jackson.
Patrick Justin McAfee has leapfrogged the entire field to become the most recognizable and most marketable face in sports television. In just a few short years, McAfee has been able to transform his brand from only being known to a small group of niche football fans into the hottest sports personality commodity since the arrival of Shannon Sharpe. Not only has he just signed one of the most lucrative 7-figure deals by ESPN, but his podcast, The Pat McAfee Show, is one of the most streamed sports podcasts in the world, essentially reinventing the wheel for what was once thought possible for a former athlete, and blazing a path for newcomers to get a piece of the action. So how can an unathletic, unrecognizable NFL punter, whose arguably most memorable moment up to that point was being arrested for drunkenly swimming in a canal, transition to becoming the most successful sports figure of recent memory? Patrick Justin McAfee was born to Tim and Sally McAfee on May 2nd, 1987, in the small rural suburb of Plum, Pennsylvania, a town of about 25,000 just 20 miles east of Pittsburgh. Pat's childhood was never one of violence or famine, but instead one that would teach him many important life lessons as he grew older. Pat was fortunate enough to have both his parents in the household, with his mom being a secretary and his father being a truck driver. Early on, Patrick would begin to understand the meaning of hard work, learning that what you desired is something not given, but instead worked for. And seeing his dad routinely work 12-hour days, while his mom kept a job and looked after him and his big brother Jason, would further instill the values that if you wanted something, you worked for it. Ironically, Pat initially didn't even have football on his radar, as early on, it was soccer in which he truly excelled in. The McAfees would drive miles up and down Pennsylvania for Pat's tournaments, often being one, if not the best player on his team at any given time. He would spend hours and hours on end kicking a soccer ball on the side of his house, occasionally breaking a window or two in the process, but more importantly, developing a freakish power in his legs that set him apart from the rest of the kids on the field.
So I rip a shot, kid puts his arm in front of it, dislocated elbow, I think, down, everybody's like, ah! Kid falls down crying, and the ball's laying there, like, go in and tap it in. And my mom's like, you're such a fucking asshole. I was like, they didn't blow the whistle.
And once he began attending Plum High School, his freshman year would see him get many looks from D1 schools, looking to have Pat become part of their program soccer team. But you know what they say, we often have a plan for life, but sometimes life has a plan for us. And concluding his freshman year of high school, life would begin to turn into a complete opposite direction than what Pat could have ever foreseen. PP&K, or punt, pass, and kick, was a youth skills competition hosted by the NFL that began in 1961 to showcase boys and girls ages 6 to 15, their adroitness in punting, passing, and place kicking. Competitors in PP&K have included the likes of former athletes such as Baseball Hall of Famer Gary Carter, Todd Frazier, and Super Bowl champion Wade Wilson, and current Kansas City Chief coach and legend Andy Reid. It just so happened that one day, Pat's mother, Sally McAfee, would be browsing the internet and would come across an advertisement for the PP&K competition. Seeing as how Pat was a natural in football, playing with the kids in the neighborhood, combined with his tremendous kicking ability, Sally knew that her son was made for a competition like this.
built like a spark plug my entire life. But football, the first time I won the punt, pass, and kick thing because my mom put me in there because on the street, we played football in Pittsburgh every day, basically. And I was always full-time quarterback. I had a massive leg. So we thought I was potentially literally procreated for the punt, pass, and kick contest. And turns out I was. So
After winning the competition and returning back to high school for his sophomore season, his impressive display at PP&K would put him on the radar of collegiate powerhouse Penn State. For those of you who don't know, Penn State has long had one of the most successful football programs, currently holding the 8th highest win percentage in all of college football, all while having the most winningest coach in NCAA history, Joe Paterno. Being asked to kick field goals for a school of this magnitude would excite any 16-year-old, let alone one that has never played a down of organized football a day in his life. After being invited and kicking footballs over the summer, Pat would do so well that he would eventually be promised a scholarship from the Nittany Lion coaches, and would soon also begin kicking for his varsity high school team, making sporadic appearances for them while still managing to ball out on the soccer field. However, during the next summer, while kicking field goals for Penn State, the coaching staff would bring in another kicker, Kevin Kelly, for him to compete with. By Pat's account, he had beaten him to show the coaches who the best kicker was, not even worrying about his recruitment. And when all things looked said and done, Pat and his father would be once again invited up to Penn State, but this time for news that would come as a shock to both Pat and his father.
all of a sudden, about 2 months later, I get asked to take a visit to Penn State up there. So my dad and I drive up, we have a good time. As soon as I get there, Mike McQuarrie walks up to me and he says, hey, just want to let you know that we're going to offer a scholarship to Kevin Kelly, the guy that you kicked against on Sunday, who's from Philadelphia. We don't know if you're a Penn State guy, but we would like to offer you a preferred walk-on spot. So my dad and I looked at each other and we're like, well, why the hell did this guy have us drive up here to tell us that, right? And my dad's like, well, we're not going to pay for a Penn State education.
What a waste. A complete waste, is what he would tell his parents. This was nearly the end of Pat's football career, as his dream of playing for Penn State fell to the wayside, as he now looked to turn his attention back to soccer. But despite this setback, there was still one person in Pat's life that wouldn't give up on football so easily. Creating opportunities means looking where others are not. Pat always had described his dad, Tim McAfee, as the hardest working human being that he had ever met, always doing anything he could to help out the family. And seeing how Pat had just seemingly had the opportunity of a lifetime of going to Pittsburgh's most prestigious college slip through his grasp, his father, Tim, wasn't ready for his son's football dream to end on a whimper. Tim would scrape together some film of Pat drilling field goals from as far as 60 yards out, mailing it to every Division I college that would come to mind. And luckily enough, Kent State would catch wind of this tape, calling Pat to offer him a scholarship upon the conclusion of his senior year to join their team as a kicker. Pat would verbally commit, shifting his attention back again to the gridiron as he went on to his senior season prepared to make the 2-hour journey to Kent, Ohio. As fate would have it, life would again have a plan for Pat, and a chance would present itself for another opportunity, one that Patrick would not let go this time around. During his senior year, and a month before National Signing Day, Pat would eventually get a call from Mike McAfee, a kicking guru who would invite him to compete in a national kicking event for highly recruited kickers and punters all across America. Pat was immediately sold, as he was more than confident in his kicking ability, with the chance to once again prove to scouts that he was more than deserving of a scholarship at any Division I level. There was just one problem. The competition would be held in Miami, Florida, and the combined cost of the trip was expected to be about $1,500. So when Pat asked his father to help him get to Miami, his dad came back with the answer you were more or less expecting.
Dad, I think, told me to actually go fuck myself. Like, okay, I already have a scholarship to Kent State at the time too. So it's like, so let me get this straight. I need to come up with $1,500 for you to go to Miami to kick to potentially get a scholarship when you already have a fucking scholarship to Kent State. That's not going to happen.
This would leave Pat tasked with coming up with $1,500 in the span of a week to somehow make it to Miami with no job, valuables, or any idea as to how he could pull it off. I think this is where most people would just pack it in and just accept the loss, as he already had a scholarship waiting for him at Kent State. But as I had said earlier, creating opportunities means looking where others are not. In 2002, ESPN would reacquire the rights from the Discovery Channel to once again broadcast the World Series of Poker, a nationally televised series poker tournament held yearly to showcase the absolute best poker players in the world go head-to-head. Online poker at the time was booming as more and more people gained a greater understanding of the internet, and the combination of the game's high stakes and ESPN taking a newer approach to how it decided to broadcast the competition made for the WSOP to be can't miss TV. The main draw of the tournament was a chance to win the main event No Limit World Championship, a month-long tournament that would field over 5,000 entrants, eventually narrowing down to the final 9 competitors who would be seated at the final table for a sufficient cash prize. And with the competition hosting entries ranging from professional to amateur to stories of dudes working normal 9-to-5 jobs, winning extreme sums of cash, and becoming millionaires virtually overnight, would inspire many, including Pat himself, to try his hand at learning poker. One such story would be of Chris Moneymaker. Moneymaker worked as an accountant in a part-time restaurant, but would miraculously win a seat at the 2003 World Series of Poker tournament via an $86 online poker card room weeks earlier. To the surprise and shock of many, Moneymaker would win a cash prize of $2.5 million, gaining a superstar poker status in a matter of days, which would inspire lower middle class in areas like Pat's to play poker with the chance of becoming instantly rich. Now, back to Pat. A couple days after being invited to the competition, Pat would overhear about a high-stakes poker game going down in the basement of an Italian restaurant in his area, with the thought of potentially winning enough money to put himself on that plane to Miami. And miraculously enough, well, I'll let Pat tell you the story.
But I got $100 from one of my friends that has money. I went in there and I turned it into $1,400. I left at like 3:30, 4 a.m. And I met my dad when he was getting up. Like he was waking up and he was like, "Where the fuck have you been?" And I was like, gave him the money, told him I needed $100, went down to the camp, ended up winning the camp, got a scholarship to West Virginia the next morning in school.
Wow.
Yeah, so then I ended up going to West Virginia.
The 2005 college football season was one of the most electrifying and eventful years of college football history, as we would receive some of the most legendary storylines and moments, while also witnessing quite literally the greatest game of college football ever played. And for Pat at West Virginia, the story would be no different. Under the leadership of Coach Rich Rodriguez, Pat would earn the starting job as a true freshman, with his team going 11-1, finishing first in the Big 12, while being the 5th ranked team in the nation, behind blooming stars such as quarterback Pat White and running back Steve Slayton. Pat would also prove to be a serviceable member of his offense, drilling 11 of 18 field goals, with his most memorable moment coming against the 19th ranked conference rivals Louisville, where after successfully recovering an onside kick, as well as drilling a 35-yarder with 4:35 left in the fourth quarter, his team would duke it out in a triple overtime before eventually prevailing 46-44. Finishing out the season would be a game against the 7th-ranked Georgia Bulldogs, with the Mountaineers surviving a late comeback, winning 38-35 to win their first ever Sugar Bowl, while enjoying the most successful season in the program's history. Success would continue to follow Pat throughout his sophomore and junior season, with his team having back-to-back 11-win seasons, while adding a Gator Bowl and a Fiesta Bowl to his collection. This period would also see Pat blossom into one of the best special teams players in the country, at one point kicking 106 consecutive extra points without a miss, while also ending the season being named to the ESPN All-Bowl team and second All-Big East, as well as earning a Big East Special Teams Player of the Week 3 times, being a semi-finalist for the nation's best kicker, and winning West Virginia's Scott Shirley Award for his second season running. But McAfee's junior season, however, wouldn't come without some hiccups.
A win and the Mountaineers are in the BCS national title game, but it's called the Backyard Brawl for a reason. West Virginia can't look past Pittsburgh just yet. It's the 100th edition of the rivalry, 10-1 West Virginia. They've already locked up the Big East and a spot in the BCS, but a win against 4-7 Pittsburgh, and it's a guaranteed spot in New Orleans with a shot at the national title.
He missed it. And McAfee wide left. I think that got in his head a little bit. You know, they call timeout or they try to take the penalty. They try to get a better angle. That's in his head.
McAfee will try from 32. He missed a chip shot from 20.
My gosh, he missed another one.
Are you kidding? McAfee had missed only 2 all year long. He has had a brilliant season and a wry smile on the face of Rich Rodriguez. His team has blown 2 scoring chances.
Despite opening up this game as 28-point favorites, West Virginia would struggle heavily throughout. Combined with some lost fumbles and ineffective play, the Mountaineers would lose the game 13-9 and effectively end any hopes of competing for their first ever national championship. Even with the shortcomings of their 2 best players, spectators would refuse to forget the 2 misses early on in the game, resulting in McAfee receiving death threats from fans alike, a moment in which McAfee would later refer to as the darkest moment of his life.
Is a moment that I have tried to basically bury deep because of how much guilt I feel from what happened that evening, because the people that I care about, my teammates, my family, my friends at West Virginia that I got to know, my roommates that I lived with there who are also on the team, they were friends and family, I guess, at the same time. Those people, what they had to experience because of my performance in first quarter, it was just the worst night of my entire life. Thought about maybe disappearing, never being seen again after that. I was told it by a lot of people walking by our house. Had a lot of bottles thrown at our fucking house, had bottles thrown in my car. Everybody knew where I lived.
Following their late game meltdown and the departure of beloved coach Rich Rodriguez, Pat's senior season would see a noticeable dip in the team's success, as they would only manage to finish 9-4 while winning a minor bowl game over North Carolina at the end of the season. McAfee, however, would finish this season averaging a career best 44.7 yards per punt, a Big East 23 punts inside the 20-yard line, and a career high 2,639 punt yards, all while becoming West Virginia's all-time leading scorer. To say that Pat had a decorated collegiate career would be an understatement, as not only would he be a part of the greatest years of Mountaineers football, but Pat is often regarded as the best kicker in the program's history. And off the backs of a highly successful stint, it would only be a matter of time before the NFL came knocking. During the pre-draft process, McAfee was projected to be taken in the later rounds of the draft, between rounds 5 and 7. Even though he was not invited to the NFL Combine, Pat would still hold workouts for the Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots, and Dallas Cowboys, with the latter initially looking the most likely to draft him. But just like in high school, another kicker would be chosen over him, as this time, Dallas would choose USC kicker Dan Bueller in the 5th round, a guy who lit up the combine just days earlier, being the first kicker off the draft board.
Sunday, we're going to be sober for this moment, go golfing, hole 14. My mom goes, fuck, from the golf cart. And she goes, what? And my dad walks over. The Cowboys just drafted another kicker. My dad goes, oh, shit. Cowboys just took another guy. Let's get out of here. And I said, what? What? The Cowboys just drafted another kicker. We need to get out of here. And we just left the golf course. And then we went back home. And I was just sitting in my living room like, man, Plan B was just a pill, I thought, but now I'm really going to have to think about this. It's like I need to figure out a plan B right now because the Cowboys are really the only people that are like, we're going to draft you or whatever.
That was until he would receive a call from Colts GM Bill Polian asking if he would like to become a part of the franchise. As you remember, the Colts were originally one of the teams Pat worked out for, and their workout could not have gone any worse. Colts special team coach at the time, Ray Richleski, was quoted as telling Pat, "I have 2 other kickers I want. I don't want to be here, but Bill Polian made me come." For Bill Polian, a guy who had spearheaded the Bills in 1991 to back-to-back-to-back-to-back trips to the Super Bowl, and the dynasty that was the Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy era of the Indianapolis Colts, Polian most certainly had an eye for talent. And knowing the opportunist he was, Pat McAfee gave him the most Pat McAfee answer possible.
Yeah, he asked me, I don't know if it was via phone or during a workout, something happened. He was like, you know how to hold if we were to draft you to punt, right? And nobody was looking for me to punt. So I was like, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely know how to do that. And I had never done it in my entire life. So then I get drafted. Vinatieri knows that I was a kicker in college. He calls me the day after. He goes, have you ever held before? I'm like, Vinny, I got to tell you this. I lied right to Mr. Burns. By that point, I'd already been drafted. So our first conversation was like a congratulations, and then he was very mad at me.
The day after the NFL draft, McAfee and his father would drive out to his high school football team's field to learn how to punt a football, birthing the legend of what would soon become the people's punter. Pat would enjoy a highly successful 8 seasons with the Colts, playing his entire career with the white and blue, and despite playing one of the most forgotten and underrated positions in football, Pat would become a fan favorite over his tenure, routinely being a top jersey seller in Indianapolis as fans fell in love with his over-the-top personality, hilarious celebrations, and creation of some of the most memorable special teams moments in NFL history.
I don't think I've ever seen a kicker with this kind of hit. Pat McAfee is going to be legend among kickers everywhere.
Oh, onside kick drive. McAfee recovers his own kick.
In his NFL career, Pat would be named to the All-Pro team twice, with one of those appearances being on the All-Pro first team in 2014. Despite playing on one of the most iconic football teams of recent memory, including the likes of greats such as Reggie Wayne, Dwight Freeney, Joseph Adai, and Peyton Manning, McAfee's closest chance at a Super Bowl ring came in his rookie season when the Colts would lose in the big game to the Drew Brees-led New Orleans Saints. On February 2nd, 2017, McAfee would shockingly decide to retire shortly before the end of the season at age 30, holding a press conference on a popular sports medium, Barstool Sports, while simultaneously announcing that he would be joining them as a contributor.
To announce that as of today, I am officially retiring from the NFL. Although I love Jim Irsay and the Indianapolis Colts organization, I want to turn my focus to making the world a happier place with more laughs as opposed to just kicking a ball on 4th downs every once in a while. I'm joining the most powerful force in entertainment and media, and I can't wait to be a full-time staff member of Barstool Sports.
Many could have never seen this coming, as Pat had just finished the season again being renowned as the best punter in football while also landing on another All-Pro team. Combined with the fact that he was playing a position where many don't retire into their late 30s or 40s, coming as a surprise to fans and players across the league alike. But in Pat's mind, it was a decision that he had begun to contemplate for the entirety of the previous season. By this time in his career, Pat had already began exploring his opportunities outside of the gridiron, hosting multiple stand-up routines with immediate signs of success.
And I open the door, and it's my dad, right? I go, what the f*** are you doing here? He said, what? I said, Dad, I was in solitary confinement, right? In a goddamn jail cell with a broken toilet, a guy wearing FUBU pants on, guy shit in there, I couldn't get the smell out. I had one phone call, and it was to you, and you hung up on me. He said, I didn't hang up on you, buddy, I really didn't. They said, they asked me if I wanted more minutes. And I'm going to be honest, it was $25 a minute. And at that particular time, your mom and I agreed, you just weren't worth it.
And being a regular guest on the Indianapolis-based, nationally syndicated morning radio program, The Bob and Tom Show. At the same time, Pat had undergone his third knee operation in 4 seasons on his kicking leg, already beginning to feel the wear and tear the longer and longer he played, subsequently questioning for the first time in his career his desire to play football, with the thoughts of what he could be doing never being able to leave his mind. The proverbial nail in the coffin would come on one fateful afternoon when Pat would be called into the office of the GM of the post-Manning era, Ryan Grigson. Now, unless you're a Colts fan yourself, I don't think I could explain just how universally despised he was by their fans, as players and media members alike have been openly critical regarding his tenure.
You know, the person who's never the smartest guy in the room is the guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. Ryan Grigson thinks he's the smartest guy in every room ever made.
Me, I view Grigson as more of a problem than Pagano. And I think it's a mistake for this man to be in this position.
Oh, yeah.
It was awesome.
Wait, what changed from the first regime to the second?
How do I describe everything?
Ryan Grigson.
And even with McAfee believing there to be animosity between the two, being called into his office, McAfee was optimistic that the GM was potentially extending him an olive branch. That could not have been any further from the truth.
For me, there was a situation with Ryan Grigson that occurred the Monday after the Thanksgiving game. If you do recall, in the Thanksgiving game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, we got blown the fuck out on national TV. I go home afterwards, celebrate Thanksgiving with my family. I come back to work Monday. I walk into the locker room and Grigson goes, "Can you come to my office?" I was like, "Yeah, man, let me go get dressed and I'll see you." You know, it was very positive. I'm maybe this is an olive branch. Maybe this is an olive branch. So I walk in there and he goes, "Sit down." And I'm like, "Whoa." Immediately, this is not what I thought this was going to be. And it was at that moment I realized, as soon as he told me the stern sit down, I was like, "Yep, I'm fucking done here." So I sit down on one side of the table. He sits down on the other side of the table. He pulls a picture out that I posted before the Thanksgiving game, Thanksgiving Monday maybe. It's me standing in the equipment room on a box with an electrical outlet coming down and me holding it like this on top of the box. Everything around it is blurred out. And it goes, "I'm just waiting for the WWE to give me a call to make the most electric promo since like The Rock or something like that." So I sit down. He has that picture on a piece of paper. Okay? He has that picture on a piece of paper. Slams it on the desk. Pushes it across the desk to me. And I look at it. And at this moment in my head, I've already said fuck it to this guy, right? So I look at the photo. I'm like, oh. And he goes, "What is that?" And I go, yup, posted that a week and a half ago on my Instagram and Twitter. He goes, "Where's that picture taken?" I said, "In the equipment room." Actually, one of the equipment managers took the picture for me, actually. And he pulls out my contract, okay? Pulls out my contract, opens it up, goes to a clause. He goes, "Since this isn't your first offense, I can fine you a game check for this." Game check, by the way, you only get 17 paychecks for your entire salary. So if you want to look up what that was, it was $100,000 almost. He said, "I can fine you a game check for this." I said, "For what?" He said, "Look, is that a football room?" I said, "Well, title is an equipment room." He goes, "Why do you have to be such a smartass?" I go, "Me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I could find you anything I want. This is why we're losing, by the way. This is why we lost to the Steelers," he tells me. So at this moment, I had decided that it is time to no longer sit back and take this. So I clearly lifted up the photo that I had of me. I put it next to me. I said, "You paid a guy $140 million and you can't keep him healthy. Your offensive line, Swiss cheese, he's blown out his shoulder 3 times and you're worried about this bullshit?" And he goes, "What did you just say to me?" I go, "Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm best in the game at what I do. I wish you would do the same. So this is a moment that he did not expect. This is a moment that he did not expect, right? He goes, you're going to walk into my office and disrespect me? I go, well, you called me in here, right? You called me into here. He said, I'm going to find you a whole game check. I said, cool, bro. And literally walked out of his office. As I'm walking out, he gives me the, get out of my office. I'm like, already walking out. Already out of the office, cuz. So then I get a call from Chuck, right? I feel like I was pretty valuable in the locker room. I was doing my job to my best ability. I showed up every day to work. I was never late. I sat in the front row of meetings. I was like, anything at work, I busted my dick off because I wanted to be able to talk. And as a punter, you have to be good to talk. You can't just suck and talk. So I told him, I said, hey man, I don't think the NFL is for me anymore. And to be honest, I don't want to make money for you guys anymore. And I'm done. I am done after this season. I'll finish this season because I'm probably going to make another Pro Bowl, which is a $250,000 bonus. But I am done.
With the severance of his football career now in full effect, Pat was now completely immersing himself into the world of sports media business. A world that would try its hardest to keep him out. If there's one thing that you haven't learned about Pat, is that he will always unapologetically be himself, making him extremely popular with the boys, but also extremely disliked by the men with the suits, trying to control which personality gets a voice. Pat is a no-filter,
I'd also potentially taken over their 30 edibles.
Controversial.
I would like to let everybody know that I did get a minor in possession of alcohol, and I did not run.
Loudmouth guy whose entertainment value comes from Pat being Pat. So when Pat initially decided to seek out becoming an analyst or media member of the bigwig sports networks such as ESPN, CBS, Fox, and others, he was promptly given a
"Oh, hell no!"
all which made him signing to Barstool Sports make perfect sense. For those of you who don't know, Barstool Sports is an American digital media company founded in 2003 that rose to prominence by catering to young adult and college frat boy audiences through its scandalous marketing, shock value content, and college campus parties it held in the early 2000s, going on to gain a loyal following while capturing the attention of millions, eventually being sold off for over $500 million in 2020. Its founder, Dave Portnoy, is easily one of the most controversial sports media figures, as his hot takes and divisive stances.
I never condone rape, but if you're a size 6 and you're wearing skinny jeans, you kind of deserve to be raped.
Correct. I stand by that. I think it's a funny joke.
You think rape is funny?
No, I didn't say that. I think it's a funny joke.
Do you understand how offensive that is?
No, I obviously don't.
I've made him into a pop culture punching bag, generating hit pieces and disapproval of him and the entirety of the Barstool's brand. But if it's one thing about Dave, is that he is unapologetically himself. And putting both Pat and Barstool together would allow for McAfee to gain a better understanding of what it is he truly wanted to become in this landscape. During Pat's time with Barstool, he would gain valuable insight on the podcasting world, as he would not only learn the internet business under the wing of Portnoy, but also would get to learn from one of the most popular podcasts at the time, Pardon My Take, eventually hosting his own show on Barstool Sports' SiriusXM radio channel named The Pat McAfee Show. It would also be under Barstool where McAfee would comedically begin training under former WCW wrestler turned developmental trainer Rip Rogers in a series called Chasing the Dream, with the goal of living out Pat's childhood dream to wrestle for the WWE, where he would train under the tutelage of a guy who had also trained other former WWE legends such as John Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar, and Randy Orton. Pat would begin making appearances as a pre-show analysis for one of the company's weekly shows, NXT, soon becoming a part of the storyline by feuding with the brand's top star, Adam Cole. Pat's charisma made him a hit with the WWE fans. During this time, he would also open a new 10,000 square foot studio in his second hometown of Indianapolis dubbed Barstool's Heartland. The partnering of Pat McAfee and Barstool seemed like a match made in heaven, as Pat had the creative freedom to do or say as he pleased, and Portnoy served as a boss, mentor, and friend all at the same time. But as the case turns out, things weren't always sunshine and rainbows in the Barstool's world. On August 18th, 2018, a little over 2 years since the announcement of his partnership, Pat would write out a lengthy Twitter post announcing his split from Barstool Sports as a whole, listing a number of reasons for his split, including the distance of Heartland being 713 miles away from the main Barstool headquarters in New York, and having financial decisions and sponsorship deals being made without his knowledge, all while citing an overall lack of respect from the middlemen and not being a part of the decisions pertaining to his brand, as the Pat McAfee brand grew in stature. Another Reddit post that I found outlined the possibility of Pat bringing in sponsors to Barstool, who then subsequently undercut him in the process by having those sponsors appear on other shows, all while not cutting McAfee in on the revenue. Pat would explicitly state that there was no bad blood between him and Dave, and despite how the business side of things soured, Pat would always remain friends with Dave, even to this day, recently appearing on the Barstool's originated podcast, Bussin' with the Boys, to discuss this sudden breakup.
And I might be just oblivious to this, but I think me and Dave have always been cool. I honestly, I don't.
Even through the breakup.
I think so, yeah.
I'm making up that energy because I've just scanned some of the stuff.
No, I think he understood like what happened.
Following the split from Barstool Sports, McAfee would create his own LLC, Pat McAfee Inc., where he would continue to promote the Pat McAfee brand, selling merchandise while launching 4 podcasts consisting of the Pat McAfee Show 2.0, That's Hockey Talk, Heartland Radio 2.0, and Good Better Bets. Increasing in popularity while generating clips totaling up tens of millions of views, Pat was just having fun, being himself while having guest appearances from friends and former athletes, recalling stories of their days as a pro. McAfee's audience would only continue to grow, and it wouldn't take long before Pat would start gaining the attention of established media companies and broadcasting networks. He would begin making appearances on Fox Sports for college football and NFL games in late 2018. In the middle of 2019, Pat would join ESPN as a color analyst for Thursday Night Football while appearing on Get Up and College Game Day broadcast. Pat's premiere show, The Pat McAfee Show, would also have a short relationship with DAZN before moving to its SiriusXM's Mad Dog Sports Radio, while also airing live directly on YouTube, with his partnership and on-air chemistry with former Green Bay Packer AJ Hawk only adding to the personality and the heights the show would reach.
And the thing that I liked about calling again with you is I could spar with you a little bit. Like I could make fun of you, you'd make fun of me back. When I did the NFL game with Robert Smith, boy, I looked like a bad guy. I'd make fun of Robert and he wouldn't say anything back. It's like, oh, I'm a terrible fucking guy. I am a terrible human being. That's not good.
I get it. Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, irrefutable. I know you came back.
Becoming one of the most streamed podcasts in America. Later this year, Pat would also fulfill his dream of becoming a WWE superstar, continuing his feud with Adam Cole, while also having his own storyline faction within the company. Pat's personality and charisma was a breath of fresh air for what was at the time a highly scrutinized and overly produced product, and Pat would continue to see his position at the company solidify as he would begin making more regular appearances, this time moving up to the company's premier brand, SmackDown, before being positioned to have a match at WrestleMania, the company's largest annual event. FanDuel, a popular online betting sportsbook, took notice of McAfee's extreme rise in popularity, with Pat announcing their partnership in December of 2021, a 4-year deal estimated to be worth up to $120 million. More than Pat had ever made in his football career. At this point, things could not have been going any better for McAfee. He had complete creative control over his products. He was directly a part of the business decisions as he managed himself, and was being recognized amongst his peers for the work that he was doing in the sports media. It might be hard to look back now, as it seems like everyone and their mother has a podcast, but what McAfee was doing at the time was borderline revolutionary. For someone who wasn't super well known outside of football, who wasn't some generational talent or someone with any marketability, to grind it out for years on the podcasting scene and force big name companies to accept him for what he is and acknowledge him was an extremely inspiring route in a landscape where it seems like everyone is just trying to become the next Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, or Colin Cowherd. He was just being himself, giving his own opinion on trending sports topics and having a fun time doing it. Nothing was forced, scripted, or planned.
About your life experience.
Thank you, Owen.
Owen, thank you.
Love you, Owen. Thank you,
Owen. I'm taking her on the
And also, fuck Boston.
It was just Pat being Pat. Pat was able to show other former athletes that no matter how big you are in your field, success off of it is very much possible, even if you aim to do it on your own terms. Of course, with the rawness and free-flowing nature of the show, he would find himself in controversy from time to time with the Aaron Rodgers COVID claims and being sued by Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer Brett Favre for defamation. But Pat would rarely ever come under fire, despite execs believing Pat to be a fire waiting to happen. But with the Pat McAfee show and the nature of Pat himself, it's almost like he always knew how to teeter the line of a good joke and being on the other side of canceled.
Apparel reading LANK across the front. It's an acronym that stands for Let a Naysayer Know. Being told by his former offensive coordinator,
That
Bill
is
O'Brien.
not what I thought.
Is that not what you thought?
Boy, let a naysayer know.
Let a naysayer know.
Of course.
The professional's right in the middle of his lead. That's all right. I just keep going.
You almost lost me again. It got real tight up here.
In 2022, Pat would find himself having a more permanent role on ESPN, serving as a full-time analyst for College Game Day, the College Football Playoff, the Pro Bowl, and the Super Bowl. It wouldn't be until 2023 where Pat would come under heavy fire from the sports media realm, and for this time, it wasn't even his fault. ESPN would announce that the Pat McAfee show would be moving under its platform to be broadcast on ESPN Television and ESPN Plus while remaining on YouTube in a deal that would be valued at 5 years, $85 million. This move by far was a win for Pat, as it allowed for him to have better access to production, rights, and overall quality for the show, while continuing to build a legacy like nothing we have seen up to this point in sports media. But for fans and critics alike, the move was heavily criticized, as many viewed it as Pat putting colleagues out of business. You see, a couple weeks before this deal was announced, ESPN had been undergoing massive rounds of budget cuts in an attempt to, quote, help us meet our financial targets and ensure future growth. They seek to accomplish this by laying off hundreds of employees and numerous veteran on-air personalities such as Max Kellerman, Susie Colbert, Keyshawn Johnson, Jalen Rose, David Polak, Matt Hasselbeck, Mark Jackson, and so many more on a list that stretched well over 7,000 employees total. So for ESPN to make such a drastic and publicized budget cut, only for them to hand out a near 9-figure deal to McAfee weeks later, is something that definitely didn't sit well with the media. Many label Pat as a sellout for joining a company who wanted nothing to do with him years ago. But if we're speaking honestly, not me, you, or anyone you know, for that matter, is going to turn down $85 million to talk shit with your best friends. And while the budget cuts are certainly head-scratching, Pat continues to put his head down, address the controversy, and move on from the matter to continue to grow his brand. I mean, the backlash that he got, You would think he was the president of ESPN giving out the contract to himself. But the reality is that McAfee earned that contract, working non-stop for 5 years to prove to the suit and ties that he belonged in this space and that his voice would be heard. And looking back at his journey from working podcasts out of a backroom office building to now becoming the face of sports media with a top show on the biggest sports company, blazing a path for former athletes to work their own brand deals and build their own names, no one really knows just how big McAfee can get. And with McAfee marrying his girlfriend Samantha in 2023 and welcoming their first child just this past year, Pat is living out the wildest of his dreams in a life that he calls stupidly dumb, but one that continues to reward him for being true to his core.